My name's Tyler, and I'm going to show you how to do a termite inspection today. The steps to that are pretty simple. We'll start by just knocking on the door and doing what's called the intro, where we'll basically tell the customer who we are and what we're doing. Um, the steps of the inspection, once we've told the customer what we're doing, we'll check their basement and any unfinished areas like the furnace room or storage rooms where we can see the floor joists. From there, we'll go to the garage and check the garage frame and walk around the perimeter of the garage. And then the rest of the inspection is out in the yard, where I'll walk around and check any sort of dead wood, whether that be mulch or wood piles or tree stumps, looking for any sort of termite activity. From there, I'll go back to the customer and give a recommendation based on the findings that I have. As we're walking around, I'm just going to kind of explain what we're looking for in terms of activity of termites inside the house. So you mostly want to focus on some of these outer walls. Of the termites are going to come in usually on the outside from the outside and then move this way. Um, so the things you want to be looking for is up in these rafters, especially in areas like this where there's two stacked up together. Look in between them for mud tubes. So we can just start walking around and see what we find. Yeah. So if you look up at this joist, obviously this has been pretty torn up. Termites eat from the inside out, and so you can see how this is just totally chewed up and destroyed by termites. As we go further down, if you look over here, you can see where they've built mud tubes on the outside of the wood. Whenever they hit the surface of the wood, they build a mud tube to seal it off. But you can tell that is just gone. More mud tunnels. If you come over here, look up in here, you can see this joist is, can you see in there? And you can see if you look at it from the outside, it looks totally fine, but when you crack it open, it's gone. And that's how termites work. See how soft that is? I could just crack this thing in half. See that? It's totally chewed up. This house has been spray foamed. It's a lot harder to see the edges on a house like this, but oh my. So this is like one of the main support beams of the house. Let's see, they've started working on that. That is an expensive fix. If they do enough damage, that is tens of thousands of dollars to fix. It's honestly like, it's really hard to say. So the outside of the house, like the inspection on the outside is going to tell us a lot. When it comes to like old or new inside, the big one we have to go off of is history. Like, do they know if there's a history or not? And if they do, then like that's one thing. If they don't, then we almost just kind of need to assume that it's new. But one of the big things that I'll look for, so for example, right here, if you look right here, there's there was a mud tunnel here. You can see the line and it got scraped off and scratched off right there too. Like, if you see those types of things and there's a history and they know it, then you've got to it's more than likely old. The other thing, if we walk back over here, so you can actually see like they came in and reinforced these boards. So like they actually already did the repairs needed to keep this house stable. But one of the things you can look at is, obviously there's these mud tunnels here. And sometimes when you find them, it'll be moist underneath it. And if there's like actual moisture, like you can be pretty certain that that's probably a pretty recent thing. And same with if you're able to break into it like this, which this is more of like an extreme thing. But if you can break in there and that stuff's wet, then yeah. So when you go into a basement, you got to check anything that's unfinished. If it's finished, we're not going to be able to see what we need to see. So the focus is anywhere where we can see these joists or just exposed wood. You want to look anywhere in a basement where you can see that stuff. Okay, so we're on the inside of the house. We're in a basement. We're gonna do the interior of the inspection. We're gonna inspect anywhere where we can see these floor joists. So in this basement, we have this whole area, that area. Over here, we're not going to waste any time because if you look in here, this has got a finished ceiling, so we're not going to be able to see anything. So we're going to focus in these unfinished areas, and the majority of our time we're going to be looking along the edges up in this area around the whole perimeter of the house. That's where termites are going to come in, so we're going to be looking for any sort of mud tunneling or damage in those areas. In a basement, there's two like hot spots where like termites will come into a house more frequently than others, and one of those areas is under the front stoop. So we're right towards the front stoop of the house. So I'm just going to pay extra attention to any area like where the front stoop is because it's just a common entry point. Okay, so we're down in this basement. One of the big things I'll do in basements like this, you'll see, so they have insulation that runs across just the exterior of the house. So one of the things I'll do is I'll just use my screwdriver and I'll pull this insulation back. Not every one, but just every other, every few feet, just pull the insulation back, and occasionally you'll find mud tunnels hiding behind the insulation. So if you look in this house, they have plywood floor joists. Termites are only strong enough to eat with the grain of wood, and if you look at this stuff, it's basically just a bunch of wood chips that are mashed and glued together, so there's not really a grain. So it's really hard for termites to eat wood like this. They can do it. I'll find them in plywood outside when it's really rotted out. But on a house like this, when termites come into it, because they'll still come into a house like this, they're just going to go into the walls, into the 2x4s, which presents an issue because we're just not going to be able to see that. So we're here doing this inspection. One of the most common entry points for termites to come into the house is right here, these garage posts. When these homes are built, they'll lay the foundation for the home, and then they'll pour the driveway separately. And so if you look, there's a crack right here, and termites will come up and come straight up into these posts. And so I always will want to come and look. If you come right around here, you always want to come and look right here and in between here on all of the garage posts, and anywhere where these little cracks where wood meets, I want to look in between those for any sort of mud tunneling. See, if you come look over here, this one's a little easier because there's a little bit of a gap. So notice how there's a little gap. You can just look through here and you'll see mud tunnels and stuff coming up through here. Really common entry point right there. If you look right here, there's a mud tunnel right there coming up straight into the garage. So if you look right here, you can see on this drywall and on this post, there's a mud tunnel coming up and going right through here where they've come into the house. So you can see it going all the way up through here. Another thing I'll do when I'm in a garage is I'll walk the perimeter of it and just look on this concrete right here. It's not common, but you'll see tunnels that are coming up the concrete and going into the wall, especially if there's a crack in the foundation. You'll find these little cracks in here, and that's another really common entry point where termites will come up through those types of cracks and into the house. Okay, so looking through here, if you look right here, you can see there's some remains where a mud tunnel fell off, and then right here you can see where I'm scraping it off, and you can tell behind that paint where they were tunneling up around in here. So I'm going to take a picture for the customer. And another thing I'll do, especially if it's in a house, I'll just take a video, zoom out, and just kind of show exactly where I am. Okay, so now we're out in the yard. When you're out in the yard, you want to be looking for anywhere where there's any sort of dead wood. So there's three main hot spots where you're going to find more activity than not. The first spot is mulch, so you'll just see me digging in the mulch every few feet. The second spot is tree stumps or any dead portions of the tree. I'll pull bark off or break open to see if I can find activity. And then also just any type of like wood piles where there's dead wood laying on the ground, I'm gonna roll those over and be looking through that kind of stuff. So under this mulch, she's got a tarp laying down, and since termites are subterranean, it's not as common to find termites in mulch if they've got a weed guard down, just because they're not gonna make it up through the guard. So anyway, yeah, like you just don't waste as much time on it. Also, it looks like this just barely went down. But let's check out here. She's still got a tarp down. So specifically what I'm looking for when I'm digging through the mulch is actual termites. If you just pop up the mulch, I'll usually go once every 3 to 4 feet. I'll just pop the mulch up and you'll just find actual little termites crawling around as you're digging through it. Obviously she's got some wood laying on the ground right here. I'm just gonna start rolling over the stuff on the bottom. In this type of stuff, there's always a chance you could find live termites, but I'm mostly looking at the wood to see if it's been chewed on. Just looking for any signs that termites have been here. So I'll flip these logs over. And that's all clear. There's nothing in there. So any portion of a tree that's dead, I want to look at. So you'll see me just poking at this stuff, and I just break it open. And I'm looking again for termites or just signs that they've been here. Shine a light down in there. Oh man, that tree is completely hollow. I don't know if you can see in there, but it is 100% hollow. So kind of like I was saying, big hot spots where you're gonna find activity are tree stumps or just dead portions of trees. So right here we've got a portion of this tree that's dead. And so you'll see me just breaking this open and there's termites in there right now. So if you look in there, there's some ants, but see those little white bugs crawling around? Those are all termites. You can see as I'm breaking through this, whether there was termites in here or not, I can see they've been in it because you can see these little tunnels and pinholes and stuff where they just chew through it all. You can just see how this stump has essentially been turned to dirt because termites are just working on it. So these ants and termites, they'll collaborate or they'll work in the same area, but as soon as I start messing with things, the ants go into defense mode and they just start killing termites, and you'll see them just start carrying them away in their mouth. It's pretty crazy. So sometimes you'll look through wood and you'll see the pinholes and tunnels where termites are chewing on it, and if you start knocking it open, they'll fall out of there, and there they are. You see them keep coming out. So again, the other hot spot that you're going to want to look for when you're walking around yards is any types of wood piles. So there's obviously a lot of wood laying on the ground right here. I'll just roll it over and be looking for either termites or just signs that they've been there. And you can, I always like to crack them open where I can or pull the bark off. So there's just some logs laying on the ground. I definitely want to check these types of things out because of their closeness to the house. But I'll just roll these things over or pop them up like this. And I'm just going to see if there's any type of activity, which there's not. Another thing you can do when you're walking around people's yards are these stones. So these stones retain a lot of moisture, and so they can be a hot spot where you'll find termites underneath them. So if you just pop them up and lift them up, occasionally you'll find termites crawling around under there. If you can find these types of stones in a mulch garden, like especially a hot spot, because again, the moisture that will build with like wood around, that's a hot spot for termites. Again, so understanding termites, a termite colony will spread out 100 yards in every direction looking for food. So if I have that much activity in a house, whether it's old or new, and I have a whole bunch of recent and like current activity that close to the house, there's a very real shot that they're already in the house, whether we see them or not. So we just need to get this home protected before there's a bigger issue inside, and they'll be fine. So walking into this backyard, there's a few things that like automatically catch my eye where I'm going to spend a lot of time looking. They have a lot of trees. I can tell that some of these trees have been trimmed and there's some dead portions, so I'm going to be breaking the bark open, looking at those things. There's also some pretty old planter boxes that I'm going to be taking a look at. Over on this side, it looks like there's some dead shrubbery or maybe some wood piles, so those are the kind of things where I'm going to, spend my time and attention. Just a tip. So like I'm going to be going into this garden right here, and obviously there's like a lot of overgrown stuff where there'll be like ticks and other bugs that can climb up your pants. So whenever I go into an area like that, or if the grass is super overgrown, I just tuck my pants into my socks. That way nothing's able to come up and chew on me. I've had that happen too many times. That could be. So one of the key ways to indicate termite damage is termites are only strong enough to eat with the grain of wood. So you'll see when you look through wood that's been chewed up, you'll see these little tunnels that go perfectly with the grain of wood. They go in like little lines, and that's clear termites. Nothing else really eats like that. So like I was saying, termites, they only eat with the grain of wood. So when you look in and you see these formations, they're just these crazy zigzags. That's going to be like carpenter ants or a beetle, but it's not termites that are doing that kind of damage. So looking at this fence, there's some damage here. It's pretty clear carpenter ant damage, and I can see that for two reasons. One, carpenter ants will eat from the outside in, so you'll see the damage very evidently. And then two, carpenter ants don't actually eat the wood, they just cut through it. And so when it's carpenter ants, you'll see sawdust and stuff packed in there where they've been. So walking around this house, one of the big things that stands out, so this water pump is leaking. So there's a lot of moisture going into the mulch right there, which just makes it a super conducive area for termite activity. So one of the big hot spots that I check when I'm walking around someone's property is mulch gardens. There's a lot of activity in there, so you'll just see me dig through the mulch every few feet to see if we find actual termites crawling around. So see these little white bugs crawling around? Those are termites. So if you look at this mulch, you can see how it's all caked together. As I break it open, there's these little networks. Termites will make mud tubes in mulch. And so that's what I was seeing over here. And that's how I knew we were getting close, because if you look at this mulch, you can see all the mud tubing. If you look right there, you can just see that this stuff's been chewed up. So I knew there was gonna be something in here. So you may not always find live termites in the mulch. So one of the other things you can look for is just like their mud tubing, because termites will build mud tubes in the mulch as they're chewing through it. So if you look through this, you can see all these little networking tunnels. If I crack it open, you can see all sorts of them in there. Termites are the ones building those mud tunnels, and so that's a pretty clear indicator that they've been in this mulch pretty recently. So whenever I find live termites, I always will take a picture of it so I can show the customer and document it. But then one of the big things you got to do is take a video. So I'll take a video here showing the live termites. I'll zoom out and show the location, and then you always want to make sure you show the house so that they know where you are in like correlation to their property. So on these raised porches, I I always like to turn my light on and just look underneath at the foundation and see if you can see any mud tunnels going up on the back of the foundation. So right here we've got a big tree. There's a weed guard around the tree, but there's a lot of mulch, and so the weed guard's clearly been here for a little while. So one of the things I'll do is I'll pull that weed guard back, and sometimes you'll find termites under it. Nothing there. So kind of like I was saying, when it comes to mulch, I'll just dig every like few feet, but I want to pay extra attention when the mulch looks like this. If you come look, you can see that this mulch is a lot thicker in this area and it's stacked up. These types of portions of mulch retain a lot of moisture, and you'll find a lot of activity when it's just a little more raised up and compacted like this. So coming into this backyard, there's a few things that I instantly noticed that I'm going to want to take a look at. The first thing is the fence, especially that back fence. It's quite a bit older, so I'm going to walk that and be looking for any type of damage down at the bottom. The big thing is that tree right there. I'll be checking that tree, pulling bark off of it to see if there's any sort of activity. Over on that side of the yard, there's a lot of vegetation. I would bet there's going to be some type of logs or like stumps on the ground over there, so I'm going to be looking for any of that kind of stuff all through the backyard. So coming up to this, there's a lot of dead wood on the ground. It's going to get my attention. I'm going to be flipping things over and seeing if I can find any sort of activity here. I want to look at the stuff on the bottom because the termites are coming up out of the ground and into it. So a lot of this stuff up top, I'm not really going to waste my time. I'm going to be looking down low at this stuff down here. Walking up to this shed, I won't want to look inside the shed, but this wood pile is catching my attention. I'm going to be cracking this wood open to see if there's any sort of damage in here. And right away, if you come look at this, so notice how I just cracked that open and you can see these moist tunnels and stuff going through it. I just found termite activity in this log, so I'm obviously going to have to explain that to the customer. So I'll first want to take a picture of the activity of itself. The second thing I like to do is if on your camera you can zoom out, and then I'll take a picture showing exactly where I found that activity. So when I'm explaining to the customer, hey, I found activity in this wood pile, I can say the wood pile right here, here's a close-up picture of what I found inside of it. Okay, in this shed, I'm just going to be looking at these 2x4 studs and looking to see if I can find any mud tunnels going up on. So when you're walking a property quickly, you could walk right over something like this, but these railroad timbers or like gardening timbers are a pretty big hotspot just because a lot of these have been sitting in the ground for 30 years. So I'll always want to just break these open or lift them up and see if I can find any activity inside or underneath them. Walking around the yard, a lot of people will have like raised gardens, and they'll build these raised gardens with these timbers. And a lot of these have been sitting here for 20, 30 years, and so there's going to be a lot of water damage and wood rot, but that type of stuff is A, really conducive because termites love it, and B, it's a very common hotspot where you're going to find activity. So anytime I see these types of like timbers laying around the house, I'm going to pay attention to them and be looking to find any activity. So walking the property, if you come look right here, it looks like the customer had some old bushes that were in this garden. Any sort of dead stump like this is a major hotspot, so I'm always going to be poking at these and pulling the bark off and see if I can break into these types of things. So that's a hotspot for them. Walking through this backyard, if you come look, there's a pretty old, you can tell that's a pretty old stump right there. So that's the kind of thing that's a hot spot. I'm going to spend some time looking in this stump. So we're doing this inspection. We're probably not on the customer's property. We're probably on HOA property, but we're finding termites in this mulch. The customer's house is obviously over there, but with how far these termites will travel, it's still an issue where the fact that they cover 100 yards puts their home in range. Why wait until they're already in the house? So if you come over here, as I'm digging through this mulch, you can see those termites crawling around. So they're definitely here. So any sort of tree stump is going to work like a magnet for termites. So whenever you find a tree stump like this, you want to spend a lot of attention to it. And I'll break into it and pull as much bark off as I can. So if you come over and watch this, I'm just going to stick my screwdriver in. Come over here. And there they are. And there they are. This concludes on how to do a termite inspection. Just some final thoughts. Spend a lot of time looking in the certain areas down in the basement, like the under the front stoop or by the fireplace. In the garage, make sure to check the posts. And then outside in the yard, mulch, wood piles, and tree stumps or dead portions of trees are all your hot spots. Spend your time and attention there and you'll find plenty of activity.